Hi there, my name is Niraj Gupta and I'm making this video to demonstrate one of my project for advanced database systems. So this project is about using SSAS to generate the cube and dimensions uh, to for the analysis purposes from SQL database. So basically what that mean is creating a SSAS project using a SQL Server uh, uh, analysis services that is part of SQL Server data tools. So for this purpose, I'm using the database, my company database that is named as V3B, and this has all the tables like branch, orders, order line, employee, customer, and other related tables. So the idea is to, instead of writing queries to generate the results, now create a SSAS project that will generate the data source view, the cube, the multidimensional cube, and the uh, dimensions. So to view the data source design, so once first, after creating the data source, then we create the data source view, and once that is generated, we will get something like design something like this. So to view this, so I have in my data source view, I have um, a fact table, uh, fact sales, that is for the or sales of a product, and that came from relating, bringing all the keys, that these are the surrogate keys from all these dimensions like customer, order line, order, branch, tax, employee, promo price, warehouse, return product, etc. And then on another fact table, and which has the surrogate keys from the vendor, product, uh, dimension, vendor shipment, and product, vendor, order, order line, etc. And also implementing a date dimension table, so that we can use the do some queries like so the employee ID, employee first name, last name, and orders, total orders for the product by the year or by the month. So we will talk about this further in the video. So let's in the from the diagram we can see that I have two different star schemas for the product sales and one star schema for the product vendor. So whenever a customer makes a purchase or makes an order from a product, all the related informations are associated with in this star schema. And when the company, or say our store, makes an order from the vendors, all the information are associated with this star schema. So first of all, before proceeding further, let's see this actual source, and I will explain a little bit about how I created the fact table, how I created the dimension tables, and then how I created the source, then the views, then the queue, and then the dimensions, and so on. So let's move to the SQL Server Management Studio. So in the SQL Server Management Studio, I have my original database which has these tables, and if we see the records of some of the table, um, we can see that the orders has the order date and required date, the customer ID, employee ID, tax ID, shipping method ID, etc. So one thing about but from here to make a SSAS project, uh, notice that all these tables have column names such as ID, um, I, ID, etc. But the point is we cannot use these IDs. Instead, we have to use some sort of surrogate keys. Say, for example, the surrogate, we need different tables which will contain a surrogate key, and this will be the alternate key or the business key. So for this purpose, I created a new database. So and I called it sales dw underscore dw, that is sales data warehouse. And in here I have created the different tables called dim date, dim underscore order line, dim underscore orders, and all the tables with dims, which mean these are the dimension tables for my data warehouse. And if I show it further, all these tables have um, all these tables have a order key, that is the surrogate key, and order ID, and all other information from the original uh, database tables. So all these tables have a surrogate key now. So we will use this surrogate key to look up these surrogate keys and use it in the fact table to make a relationship with the fact and the dimension tables. So um, and then we to create the fact table, we I used a staging table. So the my staging table is the this one, stage order new version 2. So in the staging table I have this is I created the staging table by merging all the tables that I would need to create the fact sales version 3 table. So my fact sale version 3 table contains columns like order key, order line key, product key, all the keys which I would need for the analysis, and the uh, column names which would be used as the measures during the analysis. So um, to do this, I have to do this, I created a new data. First, I created the database. Then I created all the tables I would need. So if, for like brands, customer, employee, inventory, job title, order line, uh, product vendor order line, product vendor order, product discount, promo price, return product, salary, and so on. And after that, to bring the data uh, from the original database into the warehouse, I used to insert into this table and select the names from the table, like the database name and the table. So I selected all from that because I have already created the table. Now I can select all the columns from the source table into this destination table. So this table is in sales underscore data warehouse, and this is from the original v3v. So I did this for all other tables, and once I am doing that, it created all these tables with the data and while populating the data into the sales DW. Then to now I have my dimension tables with the surrogate key and the ID key, the ID. Then the next thing I did was to create the fact table for the sales. I created a staging table, making sure that I didn't get I did not get any duplicate values, because that would cause error when we are doing the analysis, because the data would be disrupted because of the duplicates or null values. So first I created the joins, making sure I am getting the correct data, and then I selected all these columns like distinct columns for the getting the distinct data, and then into this table. Doing this, uh, it would not require you to create a table beforehand. If we select these columns and specify a table name, this table name will be created automatically, and by selecting by joining all these tables. After doing that, I also created a staging table for vendor, because I did not want to join the vendor with the sales order sales, because that would the join would give me unwanted the data that I would not want, or not the exact data that I want. So I created the staging table for vendor. The same way I created the staging table for sales order into the stage vendor, and then for to create the sales uh, fact fact table, then I selected all these um, columns from the that created a staging, that is um, this staging table, and selected it from by joining by to get the keys, the surrogate keys into the fact table and the measures into the fact table. I joined the dimension table with a column from the dimension table with the column from the staging table. So for example, essence staging table order id equals to order.order id from dimension orders, then join dimension order line and staging table order line id equals to ol order line, and so on, making sure that we are getting the exact data we want from the staging table. And once it is the join is correct, then the data will be inserted into the fact sales version 3 into the database. Then the same I did for the fact vend table. Selected the columns by first joining the tables together with the staging table, and then selecting the columns and into the fact vend. Now once these once the table is created, the next thing we would have to do is create the relationship with the keys, and which means creating a relationship with the fact table with the dimension tables. So to do that, we could alter the fact table, or we can SQL has a feature by using which we can create a diagram and bring all the tables. So when you right click on the diagram and on the new diagram, it will give you option to select the tables. Say for example, let's do new diagram, and we can select the tables we will want. So for example, I would select this table and all the related tables, like from which we brought the surrogate keys. So once we've done that, the SMSS will bring all the tables. Now without all these relationships, that and we have to form these relationships between the fact and all the dimension tables. And once we bring to do that, we could grab these keys and drag and drop into the that key like for example order line key to order line key into the fact table, and it will ask you to if you want to form that relationship, and do yes, and do repeat all, connect all those tables in the same fashion. And when you save that, it will ask, it will give a warning if you want to save, it's going to make changes to the database. So let it do that, and it will form all the relationships, and once that done, we will get all the keys created automatically. So and if we want to see uh, arrange tables, now if we want to see, we can see that it's a star schema. So this is for the our order, sales order star schema. Now if we want to see for the vendor, we can arrange this table. Let it load it first, and once we arrange the table, we can see that it's another star schema. So far we have two different star schema in our database. Now our data warehouse is set up. Now we can, with all the data into the dimension and the fact tables, now we can go ahead and create a project in SSAS. So this is the project I have been working on so far. So I will first close this and show you how to create the SSAS project. And I have done a previous video using the SPDB to, which will explain all the process from beginning to the end. And this is just overviews to get started from the data warehouse to, for using the data warehouse to do the analysis using SSAS. To create a new project from the business intelligence, select analysis services. There are different options. So from analysis services, multidimensional and data mining project, and multidimensional business intelligence, tabular project, pivot, and tabular. So our for we want to do is create a new analysis service project. So give it a name for such as demo SSAS, and click on OK. Now once the project is created, we will get an interface like this. And if you see on the right hand side in the solution explorer, we have the demo SSAS project. This is the name of the project we created. And we have the data source view, cubes, dimensions, and other things like mining structures, roles, and these are the we will not cover these parts. We are going to cover all these four things till the dimensions. So the first step is, not the first step, the next step after creating the project, we want to add a data source, which means the data source we want to use for the project. So our data source will be the sales data warehouse. So to create the data source, right click on this option and click on new data source, and it will bring you the data source wizard. Click on next. From here we can do it based on another project, but we want to select a new connection. We want to use a connection for our project. So um, if there is already existing connection, we can use that, or we can create, let's delete these connections for now, and we will create a new connection. So that will bring the connection manager wizard. So from the connection manager wizard, we want to select the server name first. Okay, so my server name is this laptop-AASL C8218. I will select that And if I'm using Windows authentication in my database, I can do that, but I'm using SQL Server authentication, so I will go ahead and give my credentials, and I will choose the database name that I want to use. So for this, I will use this sales data warehouse, which has the facts and the dimension tables. Test the connection, it succeeded, and click on OK. So now click on next, and this is the part where we have to choose the impersonation information, sorry. So this means you can define what Windows credential analysis services will use to connect to the data source, and this is basically for the security purposes. When you have different domains, you don't want to use, you can give your domain like domain for your server, analysis services server here, or but we are going to use the service account, or if you want to use the credentials, it's okay to do that. It's better to use the credentials though. So click on next and give a data source name. So I will give it demo, uh, data ds data source. Click on Phoenix. Now our data source is created, and from the data source we will now create a data source view. So to do that, right click on the data source views, click on new data source view. This will bring the welcome wizard for data source view. Click on next, and it automatically stored the created data source, that is demo underscore ds, or we can choose another data source if you want to do that. No, but we will select this data source here. So click on next, and from here now we have to choose our fact tables, or fact and dimensional tables. We can do it one by one, like clicking on and bringing it including it one by one, or we can just select the fact table. Say I selected fact version 3, and I can add all the related tables, and this is bringing by using the relationship we've formed into the database. Then we bring in the fact table for vendor, and add the related tables, and it will add all those related tables. So this is not a best practice to do, but uh, it's a convenient sometimes, or quick shortcut way of doing this. But we should make sure to only use the tables, dimensions, and facts that we need for the analysis. So click on next and give it a name. um, sales say sales demo, sales demo. Click on finish, and now our view is created. So we can see that, let me make this a little bit cleaner, so that, okay. So this is the fact table for the order, and this is the fact table for the vendor, and the relations, and these all are the dimension tables. So we can see that we brought the two star schemas into one project, and we can also do for many fact tables. Actually, we can bring different fact table if we want to do that, but make sure it is doable, but we have to be sure that we know what we are doing. So once our data view is created, that we then need to create the dimensions first. So we can go ahead and create the cubes, and that is what I have done for my project. But it's always a good idea to choose the dimensions and process them first before making the cube, because um, if we something goes wrong in the dimensions, our deployment will not work at that time. And if dimensions are fine, our cubes will be we will not face any problem to create the cube. But I'm going to create the cube first. So click on next. We will use the existing cube, or we can use the empty cube, or generate tables in data source that will from the template. But we are going to use the existing table. So click on next, and here we have for the major groups, we need to choose our fact tables. So our fact tables are fact event and fact cells 3. We then next, and it will choose group all the measures. So it grouped the measures from the vendor and the measures from the sales orders. Then click on next, and it intelligently sorted the dimension relationship with the dimension. It will, and once verifying that, if we want to use all these, or if we want to exclude anything, we can just tick it off, and it will not shown in our dimension. So now click on next and give it a name. So sales, let's give it a demo sales cube, whatever the name you want to give, and then click on finish, and our cube will be created with all the dimensions. So these are the dimensions that were selected for in the fact orders and vendor. And if we see in the design, now all the tables are colored, including the fact vendor. This is our fact table, and this is our or sales orders table. And if this is not well organized, but if we organize this structure, it will be in the star schema. And you see these two fact tables are linked to the product, um, because we are using the relating the product to the both of the fact tables. So it kind of make it as a snowflake schema, but mostly it is the star schema. Then the next thing we want to do is, since we don't have a dimension for date here that we need when we want to um, do some analysis where we have to use months and dates or days or weeks, we need to create a dimension and relate that date to whichever date we want to use from the fact. So if I look into my fact table, I have order date that I want to use to generate the analysis using the year or month or date, a week. So if I want to use the date dimension with if I want to associate it with other dates, I can also do that. For example, I can associate it with the hire date or promotion end date, employee DOB, etc. So to create the date dimension, we can click on the dimensions, right click on dimensions and click on new dimension and click on next. This will give us an option to use existing table. So if we have any table that we want to use here, say for example a table containing a dimension table for dates that we already created, we can use that table and use its key to relate it to the fact table. But since I will go ahead and I could then otherwise create a table from the SSAS, and that will also create it in the data source. So I can do that, create the table from here and link that to the associated column. But or we can do generate a timetable on the server and use it in our analysis. So for this demonstration, for this project, I have chosen this option. Either is fine, but if it's giving you the result you want, so I will choose this and click on next. Here I will select year, month, week, and the date. So we can select the date range, like I'm gonna select 1920 to 2025. So this will create a date dimensions from and populate it with the date from ranging from 1920 to 2025 with these selected things, and click on next. And if we have different options here, so either I could choose fiscal calendar, reporting calendar, manufacturer calendar, ISS 8061 calendar. These serves different um, purposes, but since I'm not going to use any of these in this project, this may be used for some other project or some different project. Here I'm going to use the regular calendar and click on next. So and give it a name, dim date time. And remember, this is not going to create it in the data warehouse. It will be on this server and we can use it from the server. Then click on finish. And this is the structure of the dimension we created with all these options. And it automatically created the hierarchy that we can use in our analysis. So once this is created, we can go on and process it. That may be a good idea actually, because we should make sure to not stack up things and process it in a batch. That otherwise we might run into some kind of trouble during processing the cube. Or anyway, we can just do some things and process it together, and if we don't run into trouble, I mean error. So this processing will take time, because behind under the hood it is creating the time, processing the dimension. I mean, it's deploying and processing the dimension. At the same time, it's also populating it. So if we see here, the date is in progress. So this is the population of the date field in on the server. So these all rows have been populated. Now we can close this window, close the deployment window, and then we can go to our cube. And in the cube, now we have to bring this dimension in here, the dimensions, the uses to use it. So to do that, we can click on add cube dimension and select the date time, then click on OK. And after doing that, we need to make sure the uses of the date dimension, like where we want to use that. So if we have these fact tables, and if the dimensions we want to use the date dimension, so we can click here, and this will bring the window for relationship. From here we can choose all. We have these kind of relationships, so but we want to choose the regular and choose the granularity. For the granularity, I will select the date and what would be the relation with. So I want to form the relationship with the date relationship with the order date. Then click on OK, and now process it to make sure our relations like the data types and everything is properly working with the date dimension we created. So if everything goes well, so since we did not process all the dimensions beforehand, and we are in the dimension, it processes all the dimensions and also the cube. So which means we can now go ahead and hopefully browse the cube. So if we check here, these are all our measures, that aggregated measures from the fact table, and these are the dimensions. So to just have a quick view, um, let's select the order total. So this is my total, and I want to view it by say the date. So say for example the month. So select the month from, and since I have some null values because there were no sales in some of the months in some years, we can use the dimensions. It's like where statement in the SQL query. So to do that, I will select the date time dimension, select the hierarchy, we have selected month, and operator not equal to, no, actually we want to do is select order. This is the wrong, actually we want to select orders from the um, okay, let's see doing this. Month not equals to, this is for month, but we did not want um, we wanted to do that on the order. So I thought I could do that, but it seems like we only can see the dimensions here, and it's logical. um, Either I could have brought the ID here and check that as not blank, so it would remove all these zeros. But anyway, we are getting the data, and to see if we see the sales by July, in July 2004 we have this many sales, in August this many, September, then in 2005 and in 2006. So this is one example, and in further in the video I will do the queries from the previous. I have some queries from one couple of tests, and I will do the generate the results using the date measures and the dimensions in this SSAS project. So now we are done with I hope I explained pretty much about what SSAS is and how we can merge, create data warehouse, and then create the dimension and fact tables, make the from the relationship, create the staging table, then create merge the tables together to get the data, and then make the fact table. And um, uh, one thing I forgot to mention, that I had used the SQL query to populate the staging table and then form the fact table. And actually I have done the lookup of the foreign surrogate keys using the SQL query. But it is a good idea to get used to using SSIS to generate the packages to merge do all these things. So say for example We have a staging table on top, and then we can use lookups um, from the staging table, and uh, like couple of lookups in hierarchy, step by step lookup, and then create a pipeline to the destinations table, which will be our um, fact table. So we can do it with in different approaches, but SSIS is a good idea to use. Anyway, you can do whichever way you want. I have chosen this way to do the project, do my project. Sometime in next project I might use SSIS to do the same thing. But to move on, I will now go ahead and close this project, and I will bring up my project that I have already set up. Now, after the overview of how to use SSAS from using your data warehouse, now I have opened up my main project, that is sales SaaS version 3. Now I will try to run some queries that I have from some of the previous tests. So I have written down those queries in SMSS, and I will try to run that here, get the result. So the first query is get the number of employees by their job title or position. So I will try to get this result in SSAS by let me clear this grid first. To get that, I would need employee number by job title. So here, execute the query, and we can see I get this result from. So I used my measure employee number, that is count of employee numbers, and I grouped that by job title, and job title is in the employee job title dimension. Now let's try running the next query. So the next query is using your database for each customer list, get the following information, and the shipping charge is 2% and something like that. So let's execute this query, and we see the tax, total shipping, subtotal, and etc. So let's try getting this information into SSAS. So first thing I will try to grab is customer ID, their first name, their last name, and if I try to run this, it says no rows found because I have not used any measure yet. So I will go ahead and get the measures. So the measures I want is order number, count of orders, the products, the shipping charge, no, first the total sales and shipping charge. Execute this, and I get this result. Now I also want to get the tax for the sales. So how do I get that? Because I have the tax percent and I have total. So what I have done is I created a calculation, a new measure, and the expression is multiply the tax percent with the total. So I will hopefully I will get the result by doing that using this measure, new measure. So if I execute this, I get the tax percent. So let's try, and also let me get the percentage here. So there are different percent applied here. It seems the tax is not correct because my calculation is wrong. So what I will do here is I will do this minus this. And remember, if we make any changes, we have to process the whatever change we have made. Otherwise, we cannot do the browsing of the information from SSAS, because the SSAS need to process what it's basically generates the queries out of the configuration we make or the changes we make to the SSAS on the project. Now let's go to the browser and see. It says since the change we made some changes, it says reconnect to the server. Now let's quickly grab all those information we needed into the browser. So customer ID, fname, lname, measures like um, orders, products, then total, shipping charge, tax percentage, and tax. Hopefully we should get the correct result. So if we want to check it, let's calculate. So the total is 15881 into 0.96 and minus 15881. So we are getting the tax out of it. So this is the tax charged for this order. So this way we can create the calculations to do some mathematical operations, or we can do the concatenations and other stuff like if in the SSAS queue. So let's go move on, and let me clear this grid and do the other query. So this query is by the customer ID and order ID, list the gross sale by the day of week. So to do this, I need customer ID, order ID, and gross sale. Gross sale is the subtotal and day of week. So let's do customer ID, then actually let's use order key, because I should bring the order ID here. So let's first change the structure. So here, if we want to edit the cubes and dimensions, dimension and measures, we can add new measure from here, like clicking on new measure and selecting it from the list of measures. And to edit the dimension, we need to click on edit dimension orders. So on the right side we have all the attributes of order. Now let's try processing it and see if we don't run into any kind of error. Okay, now run the process. It succeeded. Close. Then if we go into cube and into the browser, see, since we did not process the cube, we have to do it again. Process the cube. Let's wait for it, and now again let's run it, and it processed it. Now close that, and the window will be reloaded. So yep, now let's see if we got the order ID. So let's first grab the customer ID and then order ID. And what else do we need? Gross sales. So we need subtotal from um, the demands measures, and let's make it um, okay. Anyway, we have some information here. So now we want to see it by day. Okay, let me do one thing first. Select this hierarchy, select order ID not equals one, so we don't have blanks in here. I wanted to select this thing, but it seems well, I think we cannot do it for that, so let's delete that and we will try to view these results according to day of week. So to get that, and let's go to dimension date and day of week. So we did not get the name of it, but we can actually use, instead of day of week, we can use the date, which will give us the name of the week along with the year, everything. But we don't want that. We can actually customize the date dimension, which will have the name of week too. So if we see the results, obviously the subtotal, there are nulls in the subtotal, but we are actually getting the results by the date, by the order ID, by the customer. Okay, so our next query is to get the employee ID, first name, last name, product ID, and the product name. So let's get the employee ID first, then the first name, their first name, last name, and product ID. So to get the product ID, we will get product, and so we are doing here product ID and grouping it by that. So product ID and the product name. So let's do it by product name. So here we are getting that this employee sold by his name is used is in done product 42-inch plasma TV and told 6 of them, and it's showing 6 of them because we are counting the products instead of listing them by their ID, because in SSAS we need to have at least one measure to use the dimensions, because it's a multi-dimensional. We cannot only select the dimension. We can choose, we can use only measure, but that will be the lump sum of that measure. And when we use the dimension, we break it down according to I mean, say for example, product name, employee name, and the ID. So this total lump sum thing is broken down by these criterias. So we are getting this kind of results. So let's move on to the next query and see what we get. So yep, the next query is to get customer ID, the number of orders they made by their state. So to do that, we will go to customer, get their ID, get their state, and number of orders. So we will select orders, how many orders they have made from which state. So since there are nulls in some of the states, and there are only like 3 states, we can use filter like we will on a state. So we will select customer, select their state, um, not equals to, and the filter expression will be blank. So the query will remove all the blanks, and we can see the customer ID from Minnesota state ordered 12 products, from customer with ID 14 from this state ordered 26, again 147 from Minnesota ordered 10, from 20 ID with 20 from Minnesota ordered 50, and so on. So now let's again move to the next query. So this query is to get state, the total order, total product, total quantity, and total amount. So we need to get this by customer's state with more than 3 employees helping that customer. So in the query we used group by having employee ID greater than total amount, but um, let's see what we can do in the SSAS. So first I will get the total order, total product, total quantity, and total amount. Total order, total product, um, total quantity, and the amount total, and by customer state. So we have this information. So the data is we are getting this result because here also it's because of the data source with the total amount for this state is null, because it's the same in the data source there. So it's not the issue of the SSAS. I have to actually fix my uh, database to solve this kind of issue. It's we have to be careful when we are making our database, so that we don't run in these kind of troubles when we are doing the analysis. So yeah, moving on. I will run this query, and for this query I need last name, total order, the month, and the customer ID. So this is list the customer number, last name, total number of orders, from January to December. So basically that means using the month. So to do that, I will grab now again the customer. So customer ID, let's use both the first name and the last name. Then the total order, the number of order they made, so the total order, and now we want to get it by month, so we'll use date dimension for that, and let's use the month. So we see January, May, August, and with the years, specific years. So we are getting the result here. Okay, let's do another query. So this query is for the follow-up call, and to get the follow-up call, I have created a calculation measure for adding a month to the date. So let's see what result we get from that. So we will need the customer's first name, their last name, um, the total order they made, the orders they made, then we don't need the month. Total amount is the total, and the order id is here. Okay, then customer id, let's select the customer id, then order date, order date, and the next date, follow-up call date. Okay, we will use it once we get the result. So okay, we got all this information. Now let's see what we get with the follow-up call date. um, Sometimes it takes longer to process the result, but from the calculation, if the calculation is will work as what we did, what we saw in for the tax, it will also work because we are adding the date add function to the dimension order date, and some for some reason the system is taking longer than required to process that result. um, I will include this result. I will try to include this result into the report, but for the demonstration, I am let's not keep waiting for the result here. Um, the next part is calculating the commission for the total commission, monthly, yearly, etc. So here we are calculating all the total commission yearly and monthly in one report, but in the SSAS we will do it step by step. So let's get the employee ID, and let me close this, the employee ID, and the commission. So I have a column here for commission. So here we are getting the commission. So if we want to see where are we getting the commission from, we can go ahead and click here. So we are getting the commission from the total. Let's remove it for now. We just want to see the commission. So this is the total commission, and now if I want to see it monthly, so hoping that if I use the time dimension, it will give me what I want. So the monthly commission for employee, so in July he got these commissions, in this employee in April got this commission, these different employees. Now if I want to see that yearly, I would use year as criteria. So calendar year 2005, so employee in this calendar year got this much commission. If this employee number 13 had the highest, I suppose the highest commission. No, it's employee number 9 with the highest commission. So um, this this was the part of my project. So I built up the project from my database, which is as I explained before, v3b, and from there I created a new data warehouse as sales dw with these dimensions and the facts. So with two facts and all the dimensions, then I created a SSAS project and used the sales underscore dw as data source. From there I generated if we go to the solution explorer, I generated the view, the data cube, the dimensions, and from there we used the browser to view the query the information from the data warehouse. And we also were able to use the calculations to calculate, make some calculation specific to our need. So well, this is all about my project. There's a lot of improvements that can be made in this project, and I hope I will explore more and come up with more interesting ideas. And thank you for watching.